big from Wakefield. Leeds Rhinos have defended their crown.
And what a moment for Halifax Rugby League.
Austin is through and Warrington dominating. Great try for the Robins. Huddersfield Giants take the points home. Vincent is a poor lad. That is one sensational try.
Look out with a drop goal. Leeds gather round in jubilation.
It's hit the post. It's Wellesby. Wellesby might have got the try. St Helens are champions once again.
Well, good evening and welcome to The Last Tackle, our weekly rugby league fix here with Betfred. And after a bumper double weekend of games, it's time for some magic.
Absolutely brilliant from Jake Carter. Austin bursting through the middle. Austin scored. That's what they can do when everything clicks into place.
One of the country's great sporting cathedrals welcomes the Magic Weekend.
Yeah, Magic Weekend is back. I'm delighted to be joined by rugby league journalist Gareth Walker and former St Helens captain Paul Sculthorpe. And Scully, it's been a long time coming. We've had it cancelled, we've had rearranged dates and all that kind of thing. But finally, we're heading back to Newcastle this weekend.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? The Magic concept, and I think we've seen it grow over the years. And Newcastle's been superb. You know, it's a great venue. You know, right in the city centre, the fans love it, and it's really looking forward to getting back up there.
Gareth, there's so many stories that come out of Magic Weekend. It's fantastic for people like me and you who cover the game. All the games from the Betfred Super League in one weekend. We're back to Newcastle. We've been to Anfield. We've obviously had a year off in force. Does this feel like it's going back to its spiritual home a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does. I think if you speak to most people within the game, Newcastle crops up time and time again as the favourite venue. I mean, we've been to some fantastic stadiums, haven't we, all around the country and into Wales and Scotland. But I think there's something about Newcastle, not just the stadium itself, which is terrific, but you know, as Paul mentioned, the proximity to the city as well. You can walk in and out of the ground, into the bars and restaurants nearby, go back and watch a game again. It's just ready-made for fans, and it should be a really good weekend.
Well, we're going to be going through all 6 Magic Weekend fixtures game by game in a little bit, but let's start in the Betfred Women Super League South, the inaugural final in that brand new competition in the women's game. It was the Army against the Cardiff Demons, and it looked like the Army were going to clinch that first ever title. And then in the last play of the game, this happened.
Another set of 6 coming up. Go line now! Lewis. A cool head is needed. And Lewis has done it! A cool head was needed, and Lewis has managed to find the gap, pierce the defence right underneath the post. That's wonderful play from the Cardiff number 6.
That could be the last play of the game, it could be the win.
Fionn Lewis, well, she cut her way through. What a magnificent try that is.
That's time, the referee's just said time. What a game.
What a superb occasion. What a superb game. What an enthralling finish. And Fionn Lewis, just look at this. They knew that time was ticking down. The captain said, give it me. Hit the afterburner, went underneath the sticks.
Again, she just backed herself, didn't she? She's just backed herself, and they probably redeemed that missed kick. I know that would play on. I know Fionn, I know she would have been eating her that, but yeah, just backed herself twice, made a real impact to this back end of the game. And again, she did it in the semi-final. Special player.
That shows what a quality player and a quality person you are in this game, from demon to hero. And she steps up and converts, and the celebration starts. They have done it. They have made history of the Cardiff Demons this afternoon. A superb win in a superb game. And Fionn Lewis is definitely the game breaker.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think it's the best game I've watched all year, I'll be honest, from a women's point of view. It's standing stuff.
So yeah, the Cardiff Demons are the Betfred Women's Super League South champions, the first ever in that brand new competition. And we got a fantastic final, as we've just seen, Gareth, but how fantastic to see the game developing into the women's game, but also outside of the heartlands.
Absolutely. I think the women's game in general is such an area for potential growth for rugby league, to attract new people whether it be players, supporters, sponsors to the game. We've seen the impact that connecting to Super League clubs have had, and now to have this Southern League come in on the back of that and spread into new areas and offer women all around the country the opportunity to play rugby league at a really good standard. I think it's terrific, and you know, what a great finale to that.
And Scotty, we talk about expansion in rugby league a lot, but let's just look at what happens this season. We had the Argonauts from Kent in the Wheelchair Challenge Cup final. We've got the Cardiff Demons lifting silverware in the women's game, Toulouse top of the Championship, and Catalans top of the Betfred Super League. So it's looking very good for the game in all parts of the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that's what we've always said. We want to spread outside of the, what a lot of people deem is an M62 corridor game, and it's far from that. And I think we see that certainly with some of the trophy holders at the moment in other forms of our sport, and just great to see the passion in the women's game. I've really enjoyed watching a lot of the women's game. I've seen a lot of the build up into that, and obviously very close fixture taking the win there in extra time.
And all leading, of course, Gareth, into the World Cup next year. I still feel a bit aggrieved, like it should be in 6 weeks' time, but a fantastic opportunity over the next 12 months for the women's game in this country. Yeah,
and everything that they've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years, really since 2017, has been building towards being as competitive as possible in the World Cup, haven't they? Australia has their own NRL Women's League as well now, doesn't it? So they'll move forward, but I think they'll see that the women's game in England has certainly moved forward since 2017 when the World Cup comes around.
Well, let's turn our attentions now to the men's Betfred Super League and a full Bank Holiday Monday programme of games yesterday, and it was rounded off by an absolute humdinger at the Halliwell Jones. A top of the table clash, second versus third, as Warrington took on St Helens.
Treatment in back play, just getting patched up, the bandage being applied, and he's ready to go. Saints may be ready to capitalise on that error from Warrington. And Warrington inside their own 20 now, and Roby, Lewis Dodd, Wellesby short pass, let cover, and Saints strike first. Dodd back in field to Coote. Coote has got support, and it's Dodd, and Lewis Dodd with one man to beat. Dodd does just that. Lewis Dodd. Oh, a little burst from Williams. Williams has got support from Curry. Now Curry's got the legs. Ben Curry! It's back from the ball looped out to Longstaff, and now here's Mamo, and Mamo sets off, and Hewlett, little kick ahead. The chasers, Williams is there. Williams chasing for his one. Williams for the corner. George Williams for the corner. Just inside that Saints 40 as Williams lofts a kick towards Grace's wing, and Grace can't deal with it. The ball comes back. It's still on the last, and Batchelor has stolen it. Batchelor's got the ball to Percival. Now Percival has got a pursuing trio of Warrington players, but will he hold them up? Percival, that is brilliant. That is superb. Ignatius Passy, once of the New Zealand Warriors, and Passy manages to offload to Lewis Dodd, and Dodd, scampering run, making his 7th start in a row. Roby, then Wellesby. Wellesby, a teasing kick over the top. Makinson chasing, Bentley chasing, and getting the try.
Yo, what a game. The Paul Sculthorpe derby, of course, to your former teams, and you would have been pretty pleased with your Saints hat on with that win. They really ground it out in what was a very good game of football.
They did. It was a very good game, wasn't it, by both sides. Saints come out of the blocks early. I think Warrington finished the first half the better. Just a great game. The intensity of what has become a real big derby game now within the Betfred Super League, and it certainly didn't disappoint.
Gareth, you were there. I think I saw on your social media last night you were saying it's one of the best games you've been to for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I just thought everything good about Betfred Super League was there, on that night. Two local rivals, really terrific atmosphere. We forget we had so long without fans sometimes, but it was great to have that back again. Then you've got, brilliant young homegrown players like Lewis Dodd and Jack Wellesby going up against two genuine England stars in George Williams and Gareth Widdop, and trading blows, all coming to the fore, some fantastic tries as well. Thought it was a great night for the competition.
Just felt, for me, like a little tease of the playoffs, didn't it? A little tease of what's to come.
Yeah, definitely, and a few of these teams are playing each other, aren't they, over the next few weekends? We've got some massive fixtures at Magic Weekend, haven't we? So hopefully that's the start of a real roll for the competition and build towards a climax and eventually Old Trafford.
It's been a bit of a stuttered return for fans. I know that attendances have not been what a lot of people hope, Scully, but do you think maybe a game like that might just spark the ignition a little bit and get people's appetite going
Yeah,
again?
hopefully so, and hopefully that'll go on to Magic as well next week. Certainly the fans who were there at the game will certainly be going back. You know, it was an amazing atmosphere, and like you say, you know, it's building up now to the business end of the year where, you know, these big games, and I think you're seeing a jump in intensity in that game. You know, it's always been a big game, certainly over the past 10 years, Saints and Warrington, and certainly now coming into the business end of this Super League season, that, you know, it's certainly told.
Well, let's just take a look then at the rest of the results from yesterday's game. And it started off with the Salford Red Devils, a fantastic win for them against Hull FC, and for Richard Marshall, Gareth, a real feather in his cap, that performance, and some reason for optimism as they close up the year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was at the game the other week when they lost to Lee, which was obviously a disappointment, but I think that's been a blip generally over the last 6 to 8 weeks. They've been showing more and more signs of coming round to the way Richard wants them to play, and I'm sure they'll take plenty out of that going towards into next season.
And in Wakefield 20, Leeds Rhinos 13, Scully, Willie Potchin putting a marker down, isn't he, to take that job permanently?
He is, isn't he? He certainly wants the job, and I think he's at 3 wins out of 4 that Willie's been in charge. You know, Wakefield have always been capable of toppling teams, and I just think, you know, they've got a real good halfback pairing in Jacob Miller and Mason Lino as well, and they like to throw the ball about, and obviously growing in confidence as the weeks go on. And, you know, I'd love to see Willie get the job. I think he's just deserved. He's certainly got the credentials and the experience behind him.
I think Castleford Wigan, a bit of a strange result if you look at the form. Gareth Castle been really good going into this game. Wigan looked like they were struggling, and yet they've turned it around, and a real confidence boosting win, an important one in that race for the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I think it was very much a just win at any cost or any style really. I only saw the first half before leaving for Warrington, but I think it's fair to say it wasn't the best game of the season. But for Adrian Lamb and his squad, it'll mean a huge amount that they needed a victory from somewhere. They needed to score a try, didn't they? I think it had got to 217 minutes by the time Jackson Hastings touched down. So they'll use that as a building block now, because those big games coming up in the next few weeks, that, you know, they'll know their form has to improve.
And then a big win for Catalans against Lee Centurions. Huddersfield, a great result for them against Hull KR, Scully. We were saying a few weeks ago Hull KR were making a good run for the playoffs, but they're just stuttering a little bit.
Yeah, they are. I think there's three defeats now in a row for Hull KR, and you know, we're talking about them being one of the form teams, and they'll be disappointed they've dropped behind Hull FC as well in the league table. You know, that's obviously a big derby. Yeah, just you know, lacking a bit of form in the past couple of weeks, and we know Huddersfield on their day, you know, again are capable of winning games, and obviously had a good performance at weekend.
For Huddersfield, Gareth, Ian Watson probably very similar to Richard Marshall, we've just mentioned. Not the first year in a job that he'd have hoped for, but every now and then they just pick up a win and put in a performance that tells you that the potential is there. Absolutely, and we've seen Oliver Russell and Will Price playing alongside each other now for about 6 or 7 weeks and seem to be growing in confidence all the time. I think it's great credit to Huddersfield, but also to Wakefield and Salford. There, you know, you look at the table, they're probably the 3 teams with the least to play for in terms of either playoffs or relegation. But all 3 still putting it in and came up with 3 big wins on the bank holiday. So I think that's credit to the coach and the squad, and it helps the competition when that happens as well. I think that's one of the disappointing, you know, one of the things that must frustrate coaches when you see Salford turn over Hull like they did. You know, when you see Huddersfield beat Hull KR, you know, they're capable of doing it. Yeah, you've got to be asking that question: why are you not turning their performances out week in, week out? Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, Warrington and St Helens, as we've just seen, rounding off that round of games. Scully, we spoke on Friday and we had a look at these games, and I think we got one of them right. It doesn't look great for me and you. Yep. Fantastic for the competition that Betfred Super League is so unpredictable this year. It certainly is. I was taking some stick on Monday with some of my results that we selected, but that's what we want. We want unpredictability, you know, and teams knocking each other over. You know, it keeps the competition healthy and fans wondering what's going to happen. You know, maybe not so much for the teams that are getting beat and turning in poor performances, but you know, some great games. Well, a fantastic round, but all roads now, of course, lead to Newcastle. And Before we go into the games, let's just hear from the acting Betfred Super League CEO, Ken Davey.
It is going to be a fantastic weekend, a celebration of rugby league, a celebration in particular of the Betfred Super League, with 12 teams, 12 lots of fans, all mixing. It's going to be a great event. And of course, this year, it's probably even more important because we are very close to the end of the season, the so-called business end of the season, where things like League Leaders Shield and then the playoffs are going to be decided. So there really is a lot to look forward to. It's really important that Magic Weekend takes place in that way, because there have been disruptions in every sport, and rugby league's been no stranger to that. But we've been gradually getting over them, and we've seen in the last two rounds have been completely unhindered. Every match has taken place, and we've seen some cracking matches, and that's exactly what we wanted to see in the run-up to the Betfred Magic Weekend, and our hopes have been fulfilled. And I look forward to our vision of a really successful Betfred Magic Weekend in Newcastle being realised.
You're Ken Davey there, the acting CEO of the Betfred Super League. Gareth, that's from a media briefing this morning. You were in that briefing. No bombshells, no massive breaking news stories to come out of it, but good to get some perspective from the boardroom and the top ahead of Magic Weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ken was asked a little bit about comments from some of his peers, some of the other club owners recently, about the state of the game, which has been, pretty negative and very realistic. Ken was very positive about the things, and I think it's important at the moment that, the sport does have some challenges. All sports do at the moment. But I think in Ken Davey, they've got a guy who will have that balance between accepting they've got challenges ahead of them and making the most of the positives we obviously still have as a sport. He's very level-headed, prepared to listen to people. And I think at the moment, it's kind of a steadying hand that the sport probably needs ahead of those challenges that do lie ahead.
Yeah, I mean, an interesting time for the sport, all sports, as you've said. There's been a lot of sort of dark clouds over the sport, especially with the World Cup and things that have happened with that kind of area of the game, Scully. But as we've just said, last night's game, a proof of how good the Betfred Super League can be, and Ken being very positive about it.
Yeah, and our sport's never been without challenges, has it? In regards to the size of the game. Will we expand? The investment into the game. But one thing that we've always said is, and for me, I might be biased, but we've got the best product in the world when it comes to games like what we saw last night. And it's something we've got to shout about. We have got to expand. We have got to grow as a sport. There's no doubt. But there's still a lot of things to be positive about. And Magic Weekend is one of them. How many other sports could do what we do? 12 teams in one stadium over a weekend. 12 sets of fans. And the atmosphere is fantastic. And it's something that we've got to buy into, and we've got to keep growing.
Right, Scully, let's see if we can improve our record from Monday with the help of Gareth, of course. Let's go through the games for the Betfred Super League Magic Weekend from St James's Park in Newcastle. It kicks off on Saturday. Castleford Tigers versus Salford Red Devils. Gareth, and come into this game on back of contrasting results. Castleford would have taken a real knock against Wigan. You'd like to think Salford would be flying high.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Castleford generally, since the cup final defeat, have been very good, haven't they? They've had some fantastic results against some of the bigger clubs, and I think that's why people were surprised by the Wigan thing. This is must-win for the Tigers, I think, now in that playoff race. They'll have people breathing down the necks again. They have shown good resilience after Wembley. I think they deserve to be favourites in that one.
Scully?
Yeah, I agree with Gareth. I think Castleford have been good. I think they had a blip in performance against Wigan. All credit to Wigan's resilience. I think that the defence was what we expect from a Wigan side. But Castleford, some of the execution on attack, no doubt they're missing Paul McShane. A lot comes through him. But some of the execution from Castleford was not good enough. So I expect a response, and no doubt Darryl Powell has gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, that performance. So I expect a Cas win.
Well, next up, how good could this one be? St Helens against Catalan Dragons. First versus second, of course, Scully. Catalans can wrap up their first ever League Leaders Shield. Beyond anything else, it should just be a really good game of rugby league.
It should be a great game, shouldn't it? Obviously, Saints coming on the back of a great performance, and they'll go into it with a lot of confidence, and so will Catalan. 64-0 against Lee. You can read two things into that game. Whether they take the confidence of scoring so many points and nilling Lee, or do you want to go in battle hardened on the back of a tough performance? So I think it's going to be a great game. Two best teams in Super League so far. I think if the two teams are at their best, I think Saints' best is better than Catalan's.
Gareth, Magic Weekend later than it has been traditionally, of course, because of COVID and trying to get as many fans in the ground as possible. The advantage to that is that you get a game like this at a really important time of the season, and it must be a journalist's dream.
Yeah, absolutely. It's full of storylines, that as well, isn't it? Wherever you look, whether it be Sam Tompkins versus Lachlan Coote, right down the team sheet, you can go through personal battles. It's a terrific game for us to write about. I think the interesting things with Catalan is this year they've achieved what they hadn't done for so long, that level of consistency, week to week. Well, a couple of times when they've come to the big games, whether it be in the Challenge Cup or they went to Saints not long ago, they've just fallen a bit short. I think they'll want to lay a marker down ahead of the playoffs and say they can win these big matches. But I kind of with Scully, I think if both teams play as well as they can do, I think Saints still have the edge at the moment.
Well, you've mentioned that word consistency. It won't be in the dictionary for the next game. Leeds Riding against Hull FC. Gareth, who knows?
Yeah, I think to me, Hull look a tired team. I've thought that even they'd had that fantastic derby win, didn't they, which was a great game, big crowd. But they're losing players with injuries all the time. They've just looked tired for a number of weeks to me. Leeds, again, generally a bit like Cass, had been picking up again and playing well. I was a bit surprised by their result at Wakefield. It's Leeds for me in that one. I think Hull look a tired side.
Scully, we keep talking about Leeds progressing, a young team developing. A big part of being a champion team, of course, is the ability to bounce back and do it tough, and we might learn if we can do that or not. Yeah,
well, it's a challenge for Leeds, isn't it, to a response to that loss against Wakefield, and I'm sure Hull, will want to do the same. They'll be disappointed with that result to Salford. But we keep saying it, don't we, certainly about Hull, just the inconsistencies. We talk about some of the great players that they've got, but they're not doing it week in, week out. Leeds, they are still, we know they've gone through a transition period and a lot of young players, they've had injuries, and they've improved on their performances. Whether they can match it against the bigger boys in Super League, the likes of Catalan and St Helens, I'm not convinced at the moment.
Well, moving on to Sunday, and opening up is Huddersfield Giants against Wakefield Trinity, and Willie Potching's job interview continues with a game against his former boss Ian Watson, who of course he worked together with at Salford.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great game as well. Like you say, Willie will know what Watto does, and Watto knows what Willie likes, and I think it's a great game. Both teams coming in on the back of good wins, so I expect I think it'd be a tough physical game.
Gareth, it feels almost like this one could be a flip of a coin, but if you had to make an informed decision about this, where would you go?
Well, it's 1-1, isn't it, I think, between them this year, and I think the most recent game, Wakefield were 18-0 up early on, and Huddersfield turned it round, so I think flip of a coin's pretty accurate. I might edge towards Huddersfield. I think it is a flip of the coin game. I think it'll be really interesting to watch, and like I said before, that despite the fact that neither of those teams can really make the playoffs, they're safe from relegation, the fact that the way they played on Monday shows that they've not given up on this season. I think both coaches have their own reasons for wanting to finish on a high. Should be a good contest.
Well, Huddersfield 8-13 in the betting, which suggests that our traders agree with you, Gareth. Moving on, Wigan against Warrington, always good games, but I can't remember a time where we would have seen Wigan at 5-2 against anyone. Scully, let it go against Warrington. A really tough game for Wigan, considering the form and the injuries.
Yeah, form and injuries, as you said. They're coming off a much needed win against Castleford, but still not a clinical performance. Resilient, as I say, on defence. But coming up against Warrington, who I thought were great in patches against St Helens, certainly to pull it back to take that half-time lead at 14-12, I thought. We're seeing glimpses of Warrington. Obviously, George Williams is finding his feet. A couple of nice touches there. Scored one and set one up. I just think Warrington are favourites in this.
But 6 days to recover Gareth, but Warrington, how much will that have taken it out of them last night?
That'll be interesting to see, won't it? I think the thing we'd not mentioned earlier is some of these fantastic games on Monday came after backing up on Thursday, didn't they? Which the players deserve credit for again, but then if they've got to back up again, obviously it's a big ask. It will be interesting to see. I think George Williams is a great story for us in the media, isn't he? He's playing against his boyhood club. I spoke to him last week. You know, he'd grown up playing with Oliver Gildart all the way through, and for the first time at weekend, they're going to be lining up on opposite sides on the same side of the field. Really good storylines there around George Williams. Warrington definitely deserve to be favourites.
And then rounding off Magic Weekend, Lee Centurions against Hull KR, and Scully Lee just with that one win this season, which came against Salford a couple of weeks ago. I suppose this wouldn't be a bad stage for them to go and get a second, would it?
No, definitely not. And you've got to, admire Lee. They've certainly not lacked effort, have they? Maybe some of the quality in games, but I'm sure they won't give up the ghost. And playing against Hull KR, have lost the last 3 games. It could be an opportunity for that second win.
Feels like a big one and a potential banana skin for Hull KR, Gareth, because they'll still have playoff ambitions. Need to get some wins in these last games of the season, though, don't they?
Absolutely, that's absolutely must win for them, isn't it? And they'll know all the results in front of them as well, won't they? So if anybody's slipped up just in the table, it'll take on even more importance. Both of those sides like to play a bit, don't they? They like to play early, and the tackle counts from anywhere on the field. A bit of fearlessness, so it should certainly be an entertaining round up to Magic Weekend. Yeah,
it's some fantastic fixtures, and we touched on it earlier, Scully, but just Magic Weekend being that little bit later in the season, coming in, one of the last few rounds, it's just added a little bit of a different edge to it, hasn't it?
It has, because there's more for teams to play for. Be it pushing into that top 6 or avoiding relegation, whatever is decided at the end of the year. So I just think that, and it's fallen, I think, with the fixtures that we've got. These fixtures have been out a while, but I think where the teams fall in the table is just give us some real good fixtures. And it's very much looking forward to these games. We mentioned that last one, the Lee and Hull KR. Gareth said it. 2 teams who love to throw the ball about. I think it'll be an exciting game to watch. The result won't really mean a lot, certainly to Lee. They're planted at the bottom. Hull KR desperately need it, but I think 2 teams who'll go out and enjoy themselves.
Gareth, the end of this season is setting up so beautifully, because it's not just the usual suspects, is it, that are going into this playoff series? And a lot of the usual suspects are suffering for form a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed around a little bit this weekend, but I think there was at one point recently where that, if Wigan had dropped out of it, you could have only Saints in that top 6 that had won a grand final before. And we talk regularly about getting new grand final winners, don't we, in the sport, and it would have made it a great chance. But I think it is wide open because you're going to have your Warringtons, your Wigans, outside that top 2. You'll have teams that can push on it, and like Leeds did a couple of times from 5th, win a grand final from lower down. That'll add to the excitement of it, definitely. And
we have to, Scully, give such credit and praise to the players this season, because as we touched on with the double weekend, that's not the only time they've done it this year. There's been a lot of players that have missed out for isolation, very disruptive, and yet time and time again, as we saw yesterday, as I'm sure we'll see in Newcastle and into the semis and grand final, the players keep producing the goods.
Yeah, they do, and massive respect, all credit to the players. They're the ones who deserve it, because not only have they done it this year, they did it last year all the way, through when games were restarted, and it's been a tough ask. It's a physical sport, we know that, and you only have to look at the way that we've spoke about the Easter period over previous years, and that's coming thick and fast now. Them sorts of games and them sorts of turnarounds, but still performing at the highest level.
And it isn't just the Betfred Super League, we should say, of course. It's been fantastic across Super League, Championship, Betfred League 1, the Women's Super League as well, and more great games across all the divisions this weekend. So let's take a look now at the contenders for this week's Try of the Week vote.
Hello and welcome to the Our League Try of the Week. I'm Dave Woods. Let's have a look at this week's contenders.
Try 1 this week comes from a fabulous game between Warrington and St Helens, and this is scored by Mark Percival. It comes right from the back from St Helens, a little bit of bouncing about. Mamo trying to keep it alive on the 6th tackle, but Batchelor does terrifically well to rip that ball away, and now it's all about Percival. One hand off, one fend, Curry can't get back, and that is terrific. Try number 2, same game, this time scored by George Williams on his home debut for Warrington. Mama with a fantastic flick, Thewlis with an instinctive chip, and there's Williams with the pace and the invasion to score in the corner. Try 3 comes from the Betfred Super League South Grand Final, the Army against the Cardiff Demons, and it's Cardiff who are scoring here. Again, great teamwork, some instinctive kicking, and right on the end of this is Ellery Michael to pick up and touch down. Try 4, Salford against Hull, and this is a try that involves just about every type of kick you'll see on a rugby field. First, the measured chip from Atkin towards the corner. It's Burgess who collects and knocks it back. Then the Kevin De Bruyne accuracy here from that wonderful boot from Dan Sargentson, straight into the hands of Seo. Instinctive work again from him to thread it through. One of 4 tries on the day for Kenny Seo. Try 5, and it's Tommy Johnson who finishes this wonderful team move. Great pace at the end to scoot underneath the sticks. And finally, try number 6, and this is the very definition of an end-to-end score by Featherstone Rovers against Oldham. They've played some fabulous stuff, Featherstone, this season, and this is one of their many eye-catching tries. Gareth Gale does a lot of the good work to carry the ball deep inside the Oldham half, and it's going to be Chris Wellham who's on the end of this to finally finish. So you've seen all 6, you've got to decide now which is your favourite.
Yeah, some absolute screamers in there. Scully, who gets your vote?
Yeah, I must admit at the time I enjoyed the George Williams one, and great to see 2 of the young Warrington players, Ellis Longstaff and Josh Thewlis, having a big impact on that as well.
Gareth, some great entertainment. If you had to vote, where would you go?
Yeah, it's either that or the Percival one. I think I'm a bit biased because I was in the ground, and the atmosphere for both of those tries was absolutely fantastic. But the Percival one, we were just saying then, when he switches the ball from one hand to the other to hand off the second player, fantastic skill, and some great tries all round there.
Yeah, so you can vote across RFL social media and the Our League app. Gents, it's been an absolute pleasure talking rugby league football with you for the last half hour or so. It's going to be a fantastic weekend, isn't it? We're all heading down to Newcastle. It's finally here, the Magic Weekend.